I'm Abby.
I'm Allie. We're the Rannick twins, and this is Oops, I Arted, a part of the Hayden Collins Intelligence Syndicate.
All right, Allie, so today we're going to be covering the entity that is SAMO. Have you heard of SAMO?
No, actually, I've never heard of SAMO. I don't even know where you found SAMO.
So that's kind of the point of what I'm getting at here, is that SAMO was this big thing in probably early to later 70s in New York City, and it's surrounded graffiti culture.
Oh, okay.
So I was actually trying to find some more interesting artists to go over, and I landed on a guy named Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he was...
The name rings a bell for some reason.
Yeah, we'll get to how he started, but he ended up using SAMO as sort of an identity and promoting himself in the art world and actually getting in art exhibits and whatnot before his untimely death. So we're going to go all the way back to 1971 with a guy named Al Diaz. He grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in housing projects. Both of his parents were Puerto Rican immigrants.
First generation?
Yeah.
Also, New York in the 70s and 80s was kind of a jungle.
Yes.
From what I understand. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, so he's pretty humble about it. He says that it wasn't the best part of town. That's kind of what he leaves it at. He's like, it's the project. I'm going to go ahead and plug my sources here. I watched several interviews with Al Diaz.
Straight to the source.
Yes, which I wish that we could get more of. But the one that I took from the most is Cherokee Street Gallery, St. Louis on YouTube. That's the channel. And it's called Al Diaz Drops Truth on New York City, Graffiti, Basquiat, and SAMO.
What is SAMO? Are you going to define it?
We're getting to that. We gotta start at the source, right?
Okay.
So I'm starting with
some backstory.
Yeah, Al Diaz, he's 12. He's visiting his cousin in Washington Heights often, and he noticed that there was a lot of graffiti going on. Washington Heights was kind of the tag grounds, if you will. A lot of people were writing graffiti in numbers. Also, if you hear anything, we have two rambunctious dogs upstairs, and they are having a puppy party. So, pardon that. But it was less about the art. So a lot of people see graffiti nowadays and they see these crazy, insane, colorful wall murals, stuff like that. This was more about how many places, some of which are hard to reach, can I tag my name?
So it's more about tagging. It's like those, when you're driving down 75, you see someone tagged like the middle of a bridge. And you're like, how did you even get up there?
Exactly. So it became a little bit of a competition. Like, where can I get my tag? How many places and where can I get my tag? So he explains the tagging system as a nickname and a number. So he was Bomb 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he was Bomb because Al Diaz was really explosive and energetic, and he was 12. Just letting you know, he was 12.
Yeah, it's hard to think that a 12-year-old is tagging.
Well, and he actually gauged the age that graffiti tag artists were, and he said they were around 9 to 14.
Really?
Yeah, so there was this huge uprise of... He said it was like a competition,
Of kids on the street, they're literally getting home from school
and
going out their spray paint cans.
And tagging, probably on the way home from school, walking home,
pulling it out of their backpack.
Exactly. I thought that was really cool. I didn't know graffiti and tag culture kind of started with a template. He was Bomb 1 for years and years. And he said that he considered graffiti tagging almost more of a sport, and he took a lot of inspiration from cereal boxes and comic books as far as the lettering, which I also thought was really interesting. So he was Bomb 1 until he met Jean-Michel. And Jean-Michel wasn't a graffiti artist. Apparently, he didn't dress like graffiti artists. He didn't talk like a graffiti artist. He was just kind of in the same school as Al Diaz. They both were troubled kids.
Okay.
Al Diaz, he was a serial truant.
Oh, so he didn't like school.
Yeah, he said that he just wasn't going to school in 11th grade. And the superintendent who...
This is when he got older. So
yeah.
He was like 11th grade, around 16, 17 years old.
So he kept Bomb 1 for years, and he went to high school. He said around 11th grade, he stopped going to school. The superintendent... Instead of saying, oh yeah, we're going to kick you out, he was like, do you guys mind moving to this alternative school? And this alternative school was sort of an experimental, art-oriented...
Interesting.
Yeah, so him and Jean-Michel both ended up lumped together in this
school. In the alternative school, okay.
And...
Do we know how Jean-Michel got there?
He doesn't even really explain it. He said that he didn't really even know Jean-Michel before they went to school. He just knew that he was kind of a troubled kid. And we'll get into it. He was kind of very open about questioning authority, and so I think that could be a problem,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
In this school, instead of taking an art class in the school, they'd go to the Modern Museum of Art. in New York City.
Dang.
And he describes standing in front of a Picasso painting, talking about and learning about Picasso, which I think is such an amazing experience that you'd get to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget when we went to the High Museum.
Yes.
When we were 5 and saw Van Gogh.
Yeah, and then we went to the Smithsonian, D.C. and saw it again. And I'd be so happy to see it a third time.
Yes.
But he actually describes a story which I think was pretty interesting. He says that they were standing in front of a Picasso painting and there was this woman that was talking, kind of an art curator, talking about the piece and what it means and all that. And Jean-Michel burst out and was like, well, what gives you the authority to be speaking on this piece? Who are you to be talking about Picasso's work?
Yeah,
like it's yours.
Picasso tell you himself?
Exactly. So that's kind of an insight on what Jean-Michel's attitude was.
Well, I mean, look, as someone who loves art, just like you, art is only supposed to evoke emotion. It doesn't really matter what kind of emotion.
Yeah, you take what you need from it.
Yes, exactly. So it's hard for me, even as someone who enjoys art, to like judge how I feel and put it on others.
And what it means, and telling people what it means.
It's like in literature class, the blue curtains signify the sadness. And it's like, what if he just liked the color blue?
Yeah, what if he just wanted the curtains to be blue? That's kind of an insight on Jean-Michel's attitude. And Jean-Michel and Al Diaz worked together on the school newspaper. So Jean-Michel was a good poet and author. He was really into writing short stories and comics, and they did sort of satirical stuff that wouldn't fly in the school newspaper in today's day and age. But these high schoolers, I think, were given a little bit more freedom artistically,
liberty,
and freedom of speech, everything like that. So they ran the school newspaper. They did short stories. Al Diaz would contribute comics and essays as well. So
cool.
So this is where we get into how Samo began.
Okay, I'm excited.
So Al Diaz says that he and Jean became friends with a girl named Elizabeth, and he said he'd prefer to keep her last name out of it. And they would smoke pot with Elizabeth and her parents.
Probably a good thing he decided to omit her last name.
So, this is late 70s, right? And they're like 16, 17, and, they'd hang out with their parents. And he says that after spending a lot of time with them, it was kind of predictable. He says it was like Groundhog Day. He'd say this, she'd say that, she'd react this way.
Sounds familiar.
Him and Jean-Michel started saying they were going to go over to Samo's house. And he says because it was the same old bleep every time. So that's where Samo came into play.
So same old. Same old.
Yeah, Samo meaning same old. So he's like same old, same old.
Huh.
This was kind of a slang word that older people used. Oh, how you doing? Oh, same old, same old.
But
so
he just kind of
shortened it.
Samo.
Yeah, he shortened it into Samo. S-A-M-O, all caps. And usually if you see it, it has the copyright symbol. The C with the circle around it.
Why?
We're going to get into that. So they started incorporating this into their daily slang and amongst themselves and also their friends and kind of the surrounding scene as well. And Jean-Michel, being a writer for the newspaper, decided to write a short story about Samo. The story is really interesting. You can find Al Diaz read it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
It's about this religious businessman who's marketing religions, It even brings up a 2-for-1 Buddhist sale.
Oh, snap.
And so this guy comes in and he's trying to get a religion, get into something, and he lists through all the religions, all of them, and he's like, oh, well, we got this new thing called Samo. And the guy was like, what's that? And Al Diaz says that the religion Samo is you do anything you want, and when you get to the pearly gates, you say, I didn't know!
That sounds like my kind of religion. So I really like that concept of it being a religious businessman that's like, I got Buddhism, I got Islamic, I got Christianity, I got Catholics, Baptists, what do you want? I got it,
Exactly, it's New York City, so
he's like holding open a trench coat.
Yeah, exactly. So they land on Samo, and after that was published, they also drafted some testimonials, quotes from people talking about how good Samo has served them and how,
life-changing.
Yeah, exactly. So they do these testimonials and they handed them out on the street
This is
in New York City.
awesome.
Samo's...
The word's starting to float around.
Yeah, it's circulating. And people are like, what is Samo? What...
Is it a religion?
Exactly. So they're kind of starting to advertise it as this product. And
it's starting to sound a little culty.
after the pamphlet, Al Diaz was like, Jean-Michel, we have to start a graffiti campaign. He hadn't done graffiti for several years because he said that it almost turned pedestrian. Like, everybody was...
it wasn't cool anymore?
Everybody was tagging. So
what
he's
is
like,
a graffiti campaign, though? Is
Well,
it just free advertisement?
yeah, basically, it's free real estate. Samo started getting tagged around the city by Al Diaz and Jean-Michel. And they would do SAMO, all caps, and they do Samo, for those of us who merely tolerate civilization. Samo does not cause cancer in laboratory animals. Samo as a suggestive note. So they'd start putting these short lines next to it.
Like slogans.
Yeah, to kind of make you think, what is Samo? What's going on here? I think it's really cool, especially that they put the C there, because people are like, what is this?
And they're assuming that it's copyrighted.
Exactly.
Like, this has got to be something bigger than just someone spray painting Samo on the side of a building.
Exactly. So in Al Diaz, I think it's really cool because he recognizes it. He's like, we were experimenting with hype.
Yes. Yeah, it's like the Jim Morrison situation where Jim Morrison was like, I want to see how far I can push a crowd,
Well,
you know?
Even think of today's time where Supreme released a brick with Supreme on
Yes.
it. You know, that's hype.
People bought it because it said Supreme.
Exactly. They're selling something that they made you think that you want.
Yeah, just think about that for a second, people. A brick with the name Supreme brand on it. And people, it sold out immediately.
Because people thought that Supreme was like, you want this. This is a limited edition item. And
Brick.
Yeah.
You want this brick.
Well, and that's the kind of the whole thing, is that it's so silly, but people really take into it. They're experimenting with hype, and everything was great. Samo was all over the place until Al Diaz kind of got older. He was moving into the music scene. Jean-Michel was getting art shows. They kind of went their separate ways, and Jean-Michel took Samo with him and started calling himself Samo.
Interesting.
Which Al Diaz explicitly states in multiple interviews. He says that Samo was never, ever supposed to be a person.
No.
Samo was a product that was marketed with tons of things that it could do for you.
But it wasn't supposed to be like an idol.
Exactly. It was never supposed to be an entity.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like Banksy.
Samo, I feel like it's more of an idea, like a social construct, kind of like time. Can't pin down time.
Exactly.
But it started somewhere.
Yeah, so he wanted it to be more of a product. Mm-hmm. He calls it explicitly a product, and he never wanted it to be a person. He was kind of bitter about Jean-Michel taking that, but he also understood that Jean-Michel used this to boost his popularity in the art world, and it worked. Jean-Michel was doing all kinds of exhibitions in the 80s, all kinds of art shows. They're still doing art shows of Jean-Michel.
His name sounds very familiar. I'm going to have to look him up after this.
The big deal to me is that Jean-Michel was a co-creator.
Yeah, and for him to just take that, it's kind of like if you and I were to start a business and then you didn't want to be in it anymore, and I'm like, well, I'm Samo now.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
That's a little rude.
Exactly. And Jean-Michel actually ended up going around and spray painting, I think in about 10 different places, Samo is dead.
This is very confusing. So it's like Samo, is he having like an ego death right now?
Well, I think he wanted it to be the end. I think there was a little friction there, and he wanted it to be over.
Yeah, he wanted to resolve.
Yeah, so he did that. People responded. Jean-Michel was really, really popular up until he died at age 27 of a heroin overdose in 1988.
The unknown member of the 27 Club.
Yes, exactly. So, and Al Diaz was actually on heroin too for about, I think he said 18 or 19 years.
Holy cow, that is a long time.
Yeah, and he's clean now, so I think that...
Thank God.
Yeah, I think that it's really amazing that Al Diaz is still here to tell the story, because he actually talks about, he clears stuff up, like misconceptions of things. Like he talks about a painting that Jean-Michel gave him, and it says, to Walla, from Walla. And Walla was a name that they'd call each other.
Walla Walla?
Yeah, it was like a nickname that they had that, you know, they could speak in public and be like, you know, where's Walla? You know, and like call.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so, and he talks about how this art curator in this book talks about how Jean-Michel was on a road trip from Washington to LA, and that's where Walla came from. And he's like, she's totally wrong. She has no clue what she's talking about, you know?
This is what happens when people start making assumptions.
Well, and you think, that was 30 years ago. That's it. Only 30 years ago. Yeah. Imagine stuff, you know, what about Caravaggio's paintings and things like that? How am I supposed to know if that's legit or not.
Yeah.
We're just making stuff up about it.
Well, it's all just speculation.
Exactly. So we can only infer and assume.
So was Samo like a big... were there like publications writing about Samo?
Jean-Michel and Al Diaz did have an interview with a magazine. I can't remember who it was, but that's when they knew they were hitting big time. Like, this almost became like an international entity, Samo did. So, and it's crazy to think about because this was kind of before the internet.
And they literally started this like right out of high school, didn't they?
They were in high school.
And they started it, I feel like it was kind of a joke.
Yes.
It was kind of like, let's see, because if you're into satire, I mean... That is so satirical.
Yeah.
The religious businessman and, like, literally writing up a thesis and, like, handing it out to people. That is, like, the epitome of satire.
I think it's super cool. I think that experimenting with hype is super cool as well. And that whole surrounding, how about we get somebody excited about something that isn't even there? Like, have you heard about the guy that opened up a 5-star restaurant and he had all of these reviews and stuff, but it was in his backyard and he had no idea. He had he was hyping himself up and he, at the very last second, pulled it all together and had reservations for people.
Holy
and things
moly.
like that. Yeah, so.
Well, I think that this has been literally one of the coolest stories that we have covered, and I am blown away that I have never heard about this.
I want a Samo shirt.
I feel like a lot of people haven't heard about this. Dude, let's get some spray paint. Just spray paint it on the shirt. Why not?
I'm excited. So I hope that you guys learned something. I hope that you look up Al Diaz and Jean-Michel Basquiat. Both of them have incredible art. Al Diaz is still doing super cool stuff with street style and street art and less graffiti, but still very, very cool.
And probably taken heavily from his graffiti days.
Yes. Yeah, and the interview that I have, the one that I mentioned earlier on Cherokee Street Gallery, St. Louis, is super good. Take 40 minutes out of your day, listen to it. The way he talks is so cool. If you like a New York City accent like I do, you'll love it. Go check it out.
Is that all you got?
Yep.
All right, you can find us at Oops, I Arted on YouTube, and you can email us with suggestions, comments, and whatever else you feel is important at oopsiartedpod@gmail.com, and we will see you next week.